Today began like any other, with the bright sun casting long shadows across the breakfast table, yet there was something different about Claire. My wife, normally calm and composed, was unusually restless, her eyes darting back and forth from the clock on the wall to an old, dusty family album that lay open beside her. Every hour, almost like clockwork, she turned its pages with a kind of reverence, a smile flickering across her lips, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Another trip down memory lane?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light despite the tension that tingled in the air. She nodded, her fingers lingering on a particularly worn page. "Just reminiscing about the good old days," she murmured, not meeting my gaze. Her voice was tinged with a nostalgia that seemed forced, as if she were rehearsing her emotions. The morning dragged on, and with each passing hour, Claire's behavior grew more peculiar. She laughed a little, seemingly at random, and snapped shut the album whenever I came too close. It wasn't long before she announced she was going out to clear her head, leaving me alone with the album that seemed to hold her captive. Curiosity gnawed at me. What was in that album that had her so enthralled? I waited until the sound of her car faded into the distance before I approached the book. It felt heavier than I remembered, laden with secrets. Flipping through the pages, I found nothing out of the ordinary, just old family photos, birthdays, vacations. But then, a loose photo slipped out from between the pages, fluttering to the ground. It was a picture of Claire, younger, more carefree, kissing a man I didn't recognize. They were wrapped in a candid embrace, oblivious to the camera. The photo looked old, but the message scribbled on the back was written in fresh ink: "We'll meet again, I'll never forget you, I swear, it will happen today at our place." Our place? A surge of adrenaline shot through me. What place? And who was this man? I examined the photo again, searching for clues in the blurred background, and then it hit me, the old oak tree at the park near our first apartment. They must be meeting there. Without a second thought, I grabbed my keys and headed out, determined to confront the truth. As I approached the park, my heart pounded in my ears. There they were, just as in the photo, aged but unmistakably the same. They stood close, talking in hushed tones. Claire laughed, that same laugh that used to be reserved for our private moments. I felt invisible, a mere spectator in my own marriage. The realization stung: she never loved me. I was just a cover for her ongoing affair. The deceit cut deep, and a cold resolve settled over me. She used me, and for that, she would have to pay. Stepping forward, I cleared my throat, and the two lovers turned in surprise. "Claire," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It seems I've finally found our place." The confrontation that followed would change the course of our lives forever. As I stood there, facing the past that I had never been a part of, I knew that revenge, however sweet it might seem, was just the beginning. The park, usually a place of tranquility, now felt like the epicenter of my turmoil. Claire and the stranger, whom she'd obviously known far more intimately than I ever realized, froze as I approached. The autumn leaves crunched underfoot, a harsh soundtrack to my determined strides. "Jack, what are you doing here?" Claire's voice trembled slightly, betraying her surprise. I ignored her question, my eyes fixed on the man beside her. He was about my height, with a weathered face that spoke of years lived fully, perhaps recklessly. "And you are?" I demanded. He extended his hand, which I did not take. "I'm Eric." "And you must be Jack." His voice carried a calmness that infuriated me. Shot through me. Her hands nervously playing with the hem of her sweater. "Jack, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain, Claire." My voice rose, cutting through the crisp air. "I saw the photo, and the message. Today, at our place?" "Really, Claire?" Eric stepped forward, his demeanor calm. "We meant no disrespect, Jack." "It's not what you think." "And what should I think, Eric?" My sarcasm was biting. That my wife and her lover arranging a secret meeting is just an innocent reunion. Suddenly, a new voice interrupted us. "Is everything all right here?" A young woman, jogging by, had stopped, concern etching her features. "We're fine," Claire said quickly, too quickly. The jogger eyed us suspiciously but moved on. Turning back to Claire, I took a deep breath, trying to control the anger seething inside me. "Who is he, Claire? And don't lie to me, not now." Claire's eyes filled with tears, and she took a moment before responding. "Jack, it's complicated. Eric is an old friend, yes. But he's also..." She paused, struggling. "Go on," I urged, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. "He's my half-brother, Jack. We only found out a few years ago. Our meeting today, it was about our father's will. He passed recently, and we were discussing the inheritance." The revelation hit me like a wave. I stumbled back, my emotions a whirlwind of relief and residual suspicion. "Your brother?" I repeated, dumbfounded. Eric nodded. "We didn't want to upset you until we knew more about the situation. It's been a lot to process." The world seemed to tilt back into focus, and I felt the weight of my accusations crush me. I'm sorry, Claire. I just saw the photo and..." Claire stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on my arm. "I should have told you, Jack. I was afraid it would bring up too many questions about my past, about our mom." As we stood there, the initial shock giving way to a tenuous understanding, I realized that my reaction, though fueled by betrayal, had uncovered layers of hidden truths. The path to reconciliation would be long and winding, but as the three of us walked back through the park, a fragile hope began to blossom. Perhaps, in the face of deception and secrets, forgiveness could still take root. As we left the park, the air felt crisper, almost charged with the revelations of the day. Claire, Eric, and I walked in silence toward a small cafe nearby. The normalcy of the surrounding bustle felt out of place, given the tumult of emotion swirling within me. Once seated at a corner table, away from the curious eyes of other patrons, Claire took a deep breath. "Jack, I know this has been a shock. I should have been upfront with you." I nodded, still processing. "I jumped to conclusions, Claire. But you have to understand why. Finding a photo like that..." Eric interjected, his tone apologetic. "I get it, Jack. It looked bad. But we truly met today to discuss family matters. Our father left a complicated estate behind, and we're still trying to sort it all out." Claire pulled out some documents from her bag, spreading them on the table. "Here's the will, and the letters he wrote to us. It explains a lot about the past." I skimmed the documents, noticing the dates and the formal language describing the assets. It was all quite overwhelming. "So, what does this mean for you two?" I asked, looking up. "It means we have a lot to figure out," Eric said, glancing at Claire. "Not just legally, but personally. Our father's life was complicated. He had connections, some of them questionable." Claire sighed. "There's more, Jack. Dad was involved with some people he shouldn't have been. We're trying to ensure that his mistakes don't fall back on us." The cafe door chimed, and a man in a sharp suit entered, his eyes scanning the room until they settled on our table. He walked over briskly. "Miss Allen?" "Mr. Reed," he addressed Claire and Eric, ignoring me. "Yes, I'm Claire Allen. This is my brother, Eric, and my husband, Jack." Claire introduced us, her voice steady despite the unexpected visitor. "I'm Thomas Lightwood, an investigator with the state. We're conducting a follow-up on your father's associates. May I join you?" His tone left little room for objection. Eric nodded, and the man sat down, placing a thick folder on the table. "I understand this is a difficult time, but your father was involved in some significant investigations. Anything you can tell us about his relationships or activities could be crucial." Claire and Eric exchanged a look, then turned back to the investigator. "We're still sorting through his things." "It's a lot to take in," Eric admitted. I watched, feeling somewhat out of place yet deeply involved. "Is there a risk to Claire and Eric?" I asked, my concern growing. Thomas paused, then answered, "Potentially. Your father wasn't just a businessman, he had ties to organized crime. We believe he was trying to extricate himself, but whether he succeeded." The weight of his words hung in the air. Claire reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it tightly. "We'll cooperate fully. We want to clear his name, if possible." As Thomas outlined what he needed from Claire and Eric, I felt a protective urge rise within me. The day had started with suspicion and jealousy, but now shifted toward a united front against a hidden world of crime and shadows. We were in this together, and I was determined to help Claire and Eric navigate this maze of danger and deceit. As the days turned into weeks, our lives seemed to orbit around secret meetings and hushed phone calls with Thomas Lightwood, the state investigator. Eric and Claire dug deeper into their father's past, unearthing more than just financial irregularities. There was a sense of urgency in the air, a palpable tension that kept us all on edge. One evening, as we gathered in our living room, Thomas arrived with an unexpected guest, a woman in her 50s with sharp features and an observant gaze. "This is Elaine Marshall," he introduced her. Elaine Marshall, he personal assistant for the last decade. Elaine nodded at us, her expression unreadable. "I believe I might have some information that could help you all understand what Charles was involved in," she said, her voice steady. Claire leaned forward, eager. "Anything you can tell us would be appreciated, Elaine. We're trying to piece together a lot of things right now." Elaine sighed, pulling a small, encrypted USB from her purse. "Charles knew he was in danger. Before he passed, he gave me this, said it contained everything we would need if things went south." Eric's eyes widened. "What's on it?" "All of his communications with the so-called business partners, ledgers, everything. He was trying to negotiate his way out, but he knew if he didn't make it, this would be the only way to clear his name and protect his family." Thomas took the USB, nodding solemnly. "We'll need to take this and verify its contents. If what you're saying is true, this could be a significant breakthrough in our investigations." As Thomas and Elaine discussed the technicalities of data extraction and legal protections, I noticed Claire's hands trembling. "Are you all right?" I whispered. She nodded, biting her lip. "Just overwhelmed. I never really knew him, not like this." The following day, as Thomas returned with the decrypted files, we gathered around, not sure what to expect. The documents revealed the extent of Charles's entanglement with criminal activities, but also his desperate attempts to disentangle and make amends. It was a side of her father Claire had never imagined. But the real shock came when Thomas opened a video file. It was a message from Charles himself, looking tired and worn. "If you're seeing this," he began, his voice gravelly, "then I didn't make it. And for that, I'm sorry. My involvement with these people was the biggest mistake of my life. But there's something else you need to know." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Elaine is not just my assistant. She's also involved, deeper than she admits. Don't trust her completely." We turned to Elaine, who had paled significantly. "Elaine?" Eric asked, a note of betrayal in his voice. She held up her hands, her facade crumbling. "I was going to tell you, today. I've been working undercover for the FBI for over 5 years, embedded with your father. When he died, my role shifted to protect you and ensure the evidence came out." The room was silent as we processed her revelation. Thomas spoke up, "I can confirm her statement. We needed to ensure all pieces were in place before making this known. Your father's cooperation with Elaine was his redemption, it's what's kept you safe." Claire and Eric exchanged glances, the weight of secrets and lies making the room feel smaller. "So, what now?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now," Thomas replied, "we use what he gave us to dismantle the network he was once part of. Thanks to him, and to Elaine, we can do that without any risk to you." As they discussed the next legal steps, I took Claire's hand, feeling the strength of our bond, tested by secrets but fortified by truth. We had weathered this storm together, and somehow, that made us stronger. Elaine's dual role, Charles's redemption, And our unexpected journey through deception had brought us to a new understanding, not just of the man Claire and Eric called father, but of what family and loyalty really meant. And as we looked ahead, there was a sense of closure, and a new beginning waiting just on the horizon.